Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Hidden World. On this program we discuss the things that you don't see, the things that are behind the things that are there to distract you. I am Logan from the future. I am from the future. I'm a time traveler, an immortal. I have knowledge in my brain that you wouldn't possibly believe. But I am going to attempt, with the help of my friend Mark Wren, to unload some of the knowledge onto you in a way that will enlighten you and will give you power. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help. Welcome to the Hidden World. So I am waiting my co-host Mark Wren to get on the line. Hopefully he will shortly. But my main concern here is to outline my view of the hidden world. Now, this world appears to be a midway point between heaven and hell. That is often what we hear. Oh my God! See how things rebel against me when I try to. I'm getting static interference from. One second here while I cut this off. Well, anyway, the point being that I'm trying to explain that we are not. Oh, here we are. Listen, somebody's messing with me, man. Okay, yeah, see, the minute I tried to impart information, it's odd that things start to pop up in ways. All of a sudden, my own page started playing. Now, that kind of brings me to a story that I wanted to tell, but I'm going to leave it for toward the end of the show or maybe in the second part. But it involves the devil. Now, let me get back to what I was trying to say before I was interrupted by forces that I am not sure where they came from. We appear to be in a state of midpoint between heaven and hell. Now, I'm here to tell you that no, in the current time period, hell is still, this is hell. We are in hell. The time stretches into the future ascendingly. That is, humanity travels into heaven in the future. And we are on this hell is on its way to heaven. Let's put it like that. So if you think of it that way, everybody is put onto this plane to ascend to the hell, to either succumb to this hellish world or to raise it, to help raise it. And I just want to send to my brother here that I'm on the air because I don't think he saw my link. But anyway, so I just wanted to just point out my worldview is this. We're all here sent to this hell to either become a demon in it forever, for eternity, or to help raise it. Now, I know that's a paradox because how could it be raised into heaven and also be an eternity for the demons that live in it? That's a paradox that I'm not sure I can explain at this moment. But suffice to say that it's a matter of perception. Eternity is not something that is actually an absolute, but rather something that, I think I finally have Mark Wren on here. But it's rather something that is a matter of one's perception. But anyway, get Mark Wren on the... How long have you been on the line, buddy?
A couple of minutes, just a couple of minutes.
Sorry, man, I just started talking because I had some dead air. But I was explaining my strange worldviews, but I just want to introduce my co-host here. This is Mark Wren. He's making his triumphant return to the radio waves after a long absence due to, I believe, some medical issues, some surgeries. Is that correct, Mark Wren?
It is. I'm still currently recovering from bicep tendon surgery. I'm currently undergoing some physiotherapy treatment at the moment, and so it's been around about 3 months, and I've taken longer to recover than John Cena.
Well, yeah, and you were trying to get that horse cock sewn on too, so hopefully. Well, you already had that. You already had it, so you didn't need that. That's right. I forgot. But anyway, so
it's good to be back on the show. We're going to try and make it more of a regular thing for the listeners.
Oh, they would love that. I've been getting so many requests to have you back on the line and to talk of I'm calling this the hidden world. So basically, we're going to be talking about all things that people don't see, that, the behind-the-scenes machinations that really are what's causing all this. I think that's a good name for the show. Exactly. The Wizard of Oz is a great metaphor for what's happening, because there is a man behind the curtain, and but what's interesting about the man behind the curtain, and you can attest to this, is that he is just a little puny man like the Wizard of Oz. Isn't that correct?
I mean, the thing with the Wizard of Oz movie is that there was this big kind of booming voice, and then once they pulled the curtain back, it was just this geeky guy. And it's probably the same with this thing. It's all the imagination that goes on, and it's probably just some Rick Moranis type nerd that's pulling the strings and and telling and being the puppet master.
Right. And the only reason he's allowed to occupy that spot is because of the whole system in place, needs a dummy emperor or whatever. But ultimately, even that person's not in control, because it's just it's like, when you get into 1984 type situations, nobody's in control. Everybody's just sort of a prisoner of this kind of ideology. And, that's kind of what's going on now. It's like, do you really think that there's any, super mind in control of any of this? It just seems to me like a bunch of people vying for control,
Even among the elite themselves, there's power struggles going on, with the elite.
Absolutely. And that's really what's happening. I mean, that's what we're watching unfold. And as we funnel more money their way, as they steal more of the common man's money, they're able to wage better war against each other. And they use us like little chess pieces to fuck with each other with, It's like the Tea Party. It's just some pawns for the rich people to fuck with the other liberal rich people, It's like this weird... Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the whole two-party system is probably what needs to be challenged. You're going to need, a third party, or the Democrats and the Republicans seem to be.
They already made that impossible here. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll never happen, because the two parties will never allow it. They don't. It's not. It's like, two guys are trying to fuck this one girl, right? And you think that they're going to want to bring in another guy to try to fuck her? No. So that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. I mean, the two parties have got all the money, unless you have a viable third party with a candidate with with tons of money and sponsors and backers in corporations and stuff. You're going to just continue with the system that you've currently got in the US.
Well, what's the only thing that's going to happen in the US is just that we're going to start legalizing weed, and then people are going to start just thinking different, and it's just going to change on its own. There's no top-down way to fix this anymore, because it's so entrenched. It's just it's an aristocracy. I'm sure it's the same way in Britain. I mean, there's a super rich class, and then there's everybody else, and it's getting worse. It's getting more like that, right?
Well, I think we're slightly better off in Britain than you guys in the US, because up until recently it was really only Labour and the Conservatives that were dominating the political scene. But obviously, in recent times we've actually got a coalition government, and the third place group, which were the Liberal Democrats, they held the sort of fate of the country in their hands, and they decided to join up with the Conservatives. So we've got a coalition government of the two parties. So that's something that I never would have thought, because years ago, growing up, like the third party were just miles and miles away, and now there's quite a lot of independent parties that are getting seats in the Parliament over here, and it's starting to
change things.
It's starting to change things. Yeah, although people.
You're finally getting rid of Thatcher, the Thatcherism that's been infecting your society, like Reaganism infected our society for 30 years. But I mean, let's face it. Like,
although the people in power changed, like obviously we had Blair as Prime Minister for years. Really, like the current Prime Minister Cameron is kind of like just a Blair clone. Really, they're basically using a lot of like Thatcher's sort of like ideology and stuff in their policies and things, and like sort of. Like New Labour is basically like old Tory, old Conservative, and that's it's basically in Britain, which it might be difficult to understand in the US. Like a lot of the stuff is based on like nobility and kind of like this old boys network. But basically, anyone in politics or in corporations, they all like went to college and university with each other, which I guess mirrors something like Skull and Bones, what you might have in the US, or all the kind of old chaps at Harvard and all these sort of schools. They all look after themselves when they start getting jobs in the CIA and FBI and steel and oil and all that sort of thing. It's the same thing that happens over here. It's like an old boys network. They look after people that know, and if someone does get in trouble and they get fired, they basically get moved sideways to another position. No one ever seems to really get in trouble.
Yeah, well, I think it's because of that, there's this kind of like balance of power that keeps everybody kind of in check. And I think something happened here. I don't know what it was. I don't know if somebody drank some pig blood or whatever, but there's this real hardcore, the ones that brought you the Iraq War, it's like you don't have, I guess you had Blair there backing it up, but for the most part, you guys have all turned against that and thought it was a big mistake. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, especially what's happened with the recent troubles in Syria. There's like a lot of opposition. People are like, haven't we done enough in the Middle East? Haven't we got you can't do anything enough trouble? That'll be like attacking a hornet's nest with a cricket bat. Let's just let's just leave it alone, because the Middle East has just always been messed up, and it certainly hasn't all this regime change and all this sort of stuff, which is basically it's just the corporations and people trying to sort out oil pipelines, and they're saying it's because this, that, and the other's going on over there.
Part of the hidden world there too. All that stuff. Like even what's so fishy about 9/11, because it all ties together. It's like first the Saudis come here, invited by the Bush. Not the Saudis. The Afghanistan. Who is it? The Taliban. Who were the rulers of Afghanistan right before 9/11. They came to the White House. They were invited here, and they asked. Basically, they said to them, "We'll give you a carpet of gold or a carpet of bombs, but let us build a pipeline under you." And they said no to both. They're just like, "Fuck you." And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happens, and then we're there laying a pipeline, and the head of Unical, the one doing the pipeline, is now their president, which is Karzai. So,
exactly. Exactly. The CIA. They basically put people in charge that are going to be friendly to their way of thinking, to their mindset, to their policies. If you look through history, if you look back into the 80s when there was trouble in Afghanistan, when the Russians were in there, but the Taliban were the US. Like US paid and funded for their training, and even the might of the Soviet Union, the Russians. They realised what what a mess it was over there, and they got out. They didn't want it becoming their own sort of version of Vietnam War, so they got out before they got too trenched in there. But and then obviously, and then you see these things, and then they try and spin things and talk about Saddam Hussein,
then they go there. But I mean, I want to say.
You look at history and you see pictures of like Donald Rumsfeld like shaking hands with him and having meetings, and it's like, oh my God, they're all friends.
Yeah, it was just it's all a big clown show, and if you think about it, you just have to ask yourself, what would Exxon do if it had an army? Okay, would it not go to the places where there are oil and overthrow those governments so that it could get in there, which it is now in Iraq? And guess what? Exxon does have an army. It's called the U.S. Army. That's the Exxon Army, and it goes into wherever Exxon wants it to go. And Exxon wanted to go to Iraq, and so that's where we went. So
it's just like these private military contractors. You see them portrayed sort of in sort of all black sort of combat gear in like movies and TV shows and stuff, and really it's like Halliburton's influence and these big military contractors and oil, and
that's a whole other part of it. That's a whole other way to make money, on this thing, which didn't need to happen in the first place. So it's just all about creating chaos and then having, now we need to clean up. We have to rebuild. Let's bring in Halliburton, and then you funnel more money. And then they go have the nerve when Obama is like, the president, they're like, we got to do something about all this debt. It's like that they, intentionally just threw out the window. Like they sent footballs over to Iraq, footballs of pure money, of cash that they would throw around. Like, I mean, there was once a shipment of cash sent to Iraq that it was so large it could be seen from space itself. And that was just a handout to warlords to get them to pay off it was just this big corrupt thing just to get that oil. And we don't even have it. It's not like we have it. It's not like our gas prices went down. They tripled.
It's basically a larger version of like organized crime. It's just here's your payoff in an envelope. Keep your mouth shut, or else we'll break your legs.
That's it. Keep your people in check, or we're going to come rape your wife. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But it's some dirty business. So, we're here just to talk about it. But now I wanted to bring up Alex Jones because you brought him up, and you were talking about maybe discussing some of the things that you've gotten from his thing. Now, I'm sure he's talking about all these random shooters. Does he have a theory that they're possibly just government activated brainwash people? I think that's his theory about all these shootings.
Yeah, to be honest, I've not caught many of his recent shows, but the ones that I have caught where he's talked about the stuff that's happened in Washington and stuff, it's all possible kind of Manchurian candidate type things. And
it's never. What's with him though? It's never an attack from an external foe. It's always a false flag. Always. How could that be? Is that just? Maybe he's right. I don't know, but it just seems very.
Every time something happens, it's kind of like his first instinct is that it's a false flag. It's to keep the American people. It's to take our guns and all this sort of stuff. And
and you saw him on that. You saw him on the news on CNN, right?
The show with the British guy.
British guy.
Yeah. I don't think he did himself any favors there. I thought he come across very lucky.
Well, what's funny is that he tried to he actually went to a place where Piers Morgan was after that interview in a feeble attempt to try to get a second one, and it was just like he was just like totally ambushed him, and he was like off camera, or he was like away from Piers Morgan. He's like, I'm going to tell him he's part of the New World Order, that he's this and he's that. And then he goes up and sees him, and he's just like, real sheepish and nice and just kind of, can I get on your show again, please? Anyway, but Piers just kind of ignored him.
Yeah.
But I think
I think Piers just kind of blew him off as just a total loon or something, and I don't think Alex will probably be invited back on there anytime soon. But Piers Morgan is pretty much a bit of a scumbag in any case. I watched a show. I watched a show of his a couple of weeks ago where he had
he
like,
doesn't listen.
So you know,
he's the worst listener. I mean, you can tell he's not even barely listening. He's just thinking about his house.
So smart.
Is my hair?
He was so hated in this country that he came, you know, he ended up coming over to your country, and you on it. And apparently, when you know, like he started, he made comments, which I can't remember what about, but there was some petition where they got 100,000 signatures for him to be deported. I think it was when. I think it was after the Sandy Hook thing, and he said about you know, the gun law in America, and people were like, "You can't take away our guns" and stuff, and he said something on there, and you know, the Americans wanted him deported, but you know, he's kind of a smug, hated figure over here. He was an editor of one of our biggest daily newspapers, and you know, he was part of this phone hacking scandal, and he was up to his neck in it, and you know, he eventually had to go. And now he's a talk show host, and not a very good one at it.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I don't see many like American like talk show hosts in Britain on TV. Do you?
No, we don't have them. I mean, we used to get, you know, reruns of like, you know, Jerry Springer and
no, but you don't have anyone that's actually living in London like he is living here, and as an American, and has his own show on a major network.
No, that's as far as I know, and I don't often watch regular TV, but as far as I know, there isn't one of the sort of stature that Piers Morgan has got in the States.
I find it fascinating that you look at a lot of the big actors and a lot of the people that are big in showbiz here in America, and a lot of them are Canadian, a lot of them are British, a lot of them are Australian. You know, like even the people that are like the guy who plays, who's in that show with the motorcycles. What is it? He's
Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah, he's a British guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just funny that like American people are almost just getting, you know, it's like we're not even, they won't even employ us anywhere, you know. But anyway.
Well, the Americans have got an appreciation for kind of British and British accents and stuff. That's why they like stuff like James Bond and Monty Python and Benny Hill and stuff like that. You know, there's and then modern sort of stars, you know, like Daniel Craig, who's James Bond, and you know, and Ricky Gervais and Russell Brand and these type of guys that have gone to the US and done really well for themselves.
So do you think that America? I mean, where is first of all, British economy. I mean, how is it right now?
Pretty bad. It's not really been reported as such. They don't often use the word recession on the news, and I think they kind of fiddle the unemployment figures. But I think if you look at the rest of Europe with all the troubles that is going on in Spain and Greece and a lot of other places, I think we're kind of one of the better off places. But there's still, you know, obviously still quite a few problems in the country, but I think on the whole, it's okay. There's not so much doom and gloom on the news. Right. We could be a lot worse off.
Now, where's but I mean, like, the energy of the people? Is it? I mean, do you see people like the people that you deal with in your age group or maybe younger? Do you see people getting like cooler or less cool over time? I mean, is your society getting worse or better?
There's violent things that happen, you know, and there's outbursts and things that can happen sort of anywhere. But I've not really noticed, to be honest. I don't think it's.
You guys allow gay marriage over there?
Sorry?
Do you allow gay marriage over there?
Yeah, that's allowed. Yeah, I think we had it before you guys.
Well, we don't have it.
You don't?
We just have it in a few
or is
states.
that just California?
Yeah, I mean, a few states have it, but you know, it's not a well. Actually, now they made it the military allowed to have it, but point is that we're moving in a direction, and in terms of, but you're still pretty much a predominantly white society. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's well, we've got a lot of Asian in the UK, but they seem to be in concentrated areas. There's parts of the country where there's not really many Asians, and then there are parts where there is a lot. I mean, where I am, which is just outside of London, we've got a heavy Asian population, but everyone kind of gets on okay. But I mean, the gay marriage thing, going back to the gay marriage thing, we've had that over here for quite. I think when they first introduced that, that it was going to be okay. One of the major things was like Sir Elton John, like marrying his partner, and that was like one of the sort of big things. And of course, everyone kind of accepted it because Elton John is, kind of a worldwide mega star, and everyone loves him over here. So everyone was sort of behind it. But now, not many people are really fussed about it, and you just see a lot of stuff, like that happening, and you either agree with it or you're not, or you just close your eyes and turn away, I guess. But whatever floats your boat.
Absolutely. Well, let's get more into now what we're talking about, because this is all on the surface, and we are here to talk about the hidden world. Now, there's one thing that's being hidden from all the people in this world, and it's a serious problem that at any moment, right now in fact, could develop into a situation that could take the whole Western Hemisphere and turn it into a nuclear dustbin. And we're talking about Fukushima. We're talking about the Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan has melted down, and it's teetering. It's hanging by a thread. They're doing all they can to keep it from going blammo and taking out most of Japan and ascending a radioactive plume that would make also California uninhabitable. And this is going on right now, and do you see a lot of people talking about it?
Not really. I mean, it is covered on the news. When the first incident happened, it was covered quite heavily on the news. But I guess all it takes, I understand they had a kind of a small tremor just recently as well. But all it takes is, another tsunami or another earthquake, and and it will make things even worse, or even
it'll be 100 Chernobyls.
Yeah, it's just
So it was so crazy. Maybe they don't want to start a panic.
Hung over Europe for years as well. Chernobyl made it over here, so
yeah. Well, they don't want
to. Yeah.
They don't want they don't want to alarm people, I guess, because I think when they started reporting on it, they didn't realize how serious it was. They thought, oh well, they'll fix it. But now it's looking like they have. First of all, they've been paying the mob. The Japanese mob has been sending in just fodder there. They get people like criminals that they've, in their workforce, and they're the ones that are being sent in there just to die. And they have this plan that they're going to come in and try to get those rods out. They're these radioactive rods that are kind of, dangling, and they need to bring in a robotic hand to pull them out. And it's like pulling out a cigarette from a pack. It's not easy, So, and they drop one of those things, and it's just, it's so delicate, and I guess maybe they're just afraid that people are going to panic. But man, we're teetering on some fucked up shit. And then there's got global warming, all that stuff. Now, I mean, whether or not that's a hoax or being manufactured by some giant super machine, that's another thing worth discussing. But I mean, what do you think about is this just part of the capitalism? I mean, are they engineering disasters, or are we just not able to handle our shit?
I'm not sure whether they're engineering. Obviously, there is people talking about HAARP. Yeah,
I don't buy that.
I mean,
maybe.
Obviously, going back a few years, if you remember I think it might have been one of the early Superman movies. I think it might have been Superman 1 or Superman 2, and they were basically talking about satellites, and there was a couple that had won a competition from Superman's newspaper, and they went to Colombia, and basically this satellite just changed the weather, and that was like, you know, I was like, how can a machine just change the weather? It was like a sunny day, and all of a sudden they made it rain. So obviously there are things in place where, you know, weather can be manipulated, and obviously if governments are, you know, can see an advantage to doing that, to, you know, raise tariffs for energy supply and water and things like that, then I guess they would do it.
Well, what makes everything seem much more plausible is the fact that the governments are being run by corporations, and corporations are trying to make money. So they would conceivably, now that they have the reins of government, they've bought their way in, especially here in America, they would basically, you know, have the government do all kinds of crazy shit just to make their money. You know, like we just had this big shutdown of the government, you know, and that was essentially, all that was the Koch brothers, these two rich guys who have about $80 billion, they just, you know, they were trying to make some money. So it's like betting on a horse, and you know that somebody's going to come along and kick the horse in the leg, you know, and you know it's going to happen. So they planned it. They placed bets in the stock market based upon it, and then they caused it. And so it's like, you know, we're just, like I said, we're just these pawns in these big stake games, and who knows if they're being, you know, like these disasters are being caused, or, you know, but it's not hard to believe.
I mean, that was on our news quite a lot when you guys had the problems in recent weeks with the government shutdown and sort of showing like national parks that were closed down, and even websites were closed down where people were trying to do stuff, and it just, and the amount of problems you guys seem to have with, you know, because you've got all these different branches of your government. You've got the House of Representatives, and you've got the judicial and the executive branch, and it just seemed like there were just so many people, you know, trying to kind of stick their oar in, and it seemed just like a huge mess. It just seemed like all you needed just someone just to get like, you know, like a megaphone and just yell out and just say, you know, can we just stop? You know, just needed someone needed someone just to shout out stop and just control the situation.
Well, look, I mean, it's very simple what's going on. We have a neo-Confederate party here that's rising, and it's been hidden from view ever since the Civil War because they never accepted defeat. The South of the United States, you know, there's a large contingent of people who still want to bring back the Confederacy, okay? Then you have a group of super rich motherfuckers who are just, all they care about is making money, and anything that interferes with that, they're going to fuck with. So they use these people, you know, especially now they saw their perfect opportunity now that we have a black president. They inflamed all these idiots. And so they you know, instructed them to do this thing. And these idiots were willing to even default the United States and, you know, not have us pay our debts and make us into a deadbeat nation. They didn't care because they were happy it to come tumbling down because, let's face it, the neo-Confederates here know that they can't get power unless we crumble and then they build it back up, you know. So they're ready to do it. Of course, the rich backers of them told them to stop right away, you know, when it became like ridiculous. And Obama did a good job of playing chess with them because they were trying to fuck with him big time. But let's face it wasn't about the healthcare thing. It was just about making some money, you know, on the quick. You know,
yeah, that's it. It was kind of coincidental at the time that when, you know, they were trying to push through the Obamacare, and you know, there was all these sort of two things going on at the same time. People were saying, well, if we didn't have this, then we'd have enough money to, you know, pay the debts. But I mean, the US is, you know, kind of in a lot of debt to, you know, to like China and Japan and Saudi Arabia.
But that was engineered.
That
was engineered because like they made it so that nobody that's rich here pays any taxes. So it's like there was bound to be a debt after a while if you don't have people paying enough taxes, you know.
And basically every like president that gets elected or something, they say, I'm gonna. Almost their first thing is their sort of first pledge to the electorate is about taxes, and they're saying, well, we're gonna raise the taxes like just hands. it
What's
never
that?
happens. They never penalise the rich, and there's some statistic where it's the Americans are richer than like the rest of the percent put together. It's just obscene.
Yeah, they own. Let's put it like this: 1% of the population owns 90% of the wealth, and the other half owns the other 10. The bottom half owns about 5% of the wealth. So it's just like it's so disproportionate. But that's just but that's the structure you get if you don't make these people pay their taxes. They just build up money, and as they build up money, they subvert the democracy because they have the money to do it. Think about it. If you have $80 billion, and guess what? Obama spent just $1 billion on his campaign, right? So what's $1 billion to you? It's nothing. It's like it's just you have 80 of them. So they spent millions and millions to try. What I think is fascinating is that there was all this money spent on trying to defeat this guy, and there was also this is another thing I wanted to discuss on the show, was that there was I don't know if I discussed this already, but there was already the whole anonymous factor that came into this election. Obama was apparently rigged to lose the election through electronic voting manipulation, and Anonymous figured it out beforehand. They somehow detected the hacking going on, and they actually wrote an article in BuzzFeed saying, look, we know you're doing this, Karl Rove. We know you're trying to steal Ohio like you did the last time. In fact, when Kerry didn't win, he was supposed to win as well, and they rigged Ohio's servers went down, and then they came back up, and Kerry's lead had become Bush's lead. I mean, the numbers just flipped completely. So that was, and everyone was like, why is Romney was completely shocked that he lost, and I don't know if you saw Karl Rove on Fox News that night. He was having a meltdown. He couldn't believe it, and because the same thing happened that happened during the Kerry election. The servers in Ohio went down, but then they came back up, and they didn't flip, and Obama won. And it was complete shock to Karl Rove because Karl Rove had rigged Romney to win. And that's why they were all predicting it on Fox News, and Romney was confident, and they kept calling him Mr. President. And that's why and even though the polls were telling us that Obama was winning, they were just going to say, oh, well, the polls were wrong. But guess what? Anonymous blocked that shit. So we have this also hidden force of computer geniuses, and we don't even know how old they are, but they're fucking up shit, and they're blocking a lot of this stuff, that's an interesting...
That's going to be one of the next kind of, there's going to be some sort of cyber-type incident, probably something maybe similar to like what happened in, was it Die Hard 4, where, that was to do with the...
Yes. Die Harder.
Die Harder, yeah.
Was that with Samuel
something
Jackson?
like that, where something will be hacked into, and it will set off like a bunch of military things, and a terrorist incident or something. Something like that will happen. But obviously the electronic voting thing is obviously a big worry. People haven't got the time in their schedules to physically go to a polling station and just put an X in a box with a pen or a pencil, and you can electronically vote. People I've not heard that story that you just heard, but that's very interesting.
I know, it's hilarious because they even wrote an article after the election, and they're like, guess what, Karl Rove, we saw what you're trying to do, and guess what we did? What they did was they built a firewall inside I don't know, wherever they were finding the hacking going on inside the server of Ohio, and they saw the portholes that were built by the Rove team of computer experts, and what they did was they built these little firewalls that the minute the server went down, they were able to turn on. And they even said in the letter that they wrote, they're like, how many times did you try to log into your thing and fail? 67 times. So basically they blocked them from logging into their own system. Wow. And when you heard about Romney's computer thing going down, I don't know if you heard about that. They were talking about his Get Out the Vote software failed on the election day, but that was not. It was called Orca or something like that. It did not. That was the software they were using to rig the election, and that failed. And so it's like funny that it became the story that his Get Out the Vote software failed. He had no Get Out the Vote software. All he was going to do was rig the voting machines. And so, yeah, of course, make no mistake, man. The voting machines were created so that they could rig the elections, and they're trying to get them to, do them everywhere. But they don't do them in Britain, right? UK.
No. You still literally got to go to the. I mean, we don't get a very good turnout whenever there's an election. I think it's around about sort of about 30% vote, maybe just over 30%, which is very poor. I remember it being a lot more back in the day, but I mean, people are just so kind of disillusioned with the whole voting thing, and it doesn't matter who I vote for, things aren't going to change, so people just don't bother. So anyway, let me ask you a question. So New York City have got a new mayor. What are your thoughts on Bill de Blasio?
Well, listen, we're going to run out of time here, but we're going to pick it up at another feed. So I'll answer that on the other side. The link will be on my Twitter, so just click on it, okay?
Cool.
All right, in about 1 minute. Bye.
Bye.